If you've ever wondered about the business side of private practice and asked questions like, what's worked for others, what's not worked for others, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Therapy for Your Practice interview series, where I interview practice owners to find out how they built their practice, what they loved, what they hated. And it's all unedited and uncut. So you get the authentic and sometimes humorous version. So we're going to dive into the non clinical side of private practice today. I'm Nate, and I'm here with Lauren Ratliff of Matrescence Therapy. Lauren, should we open up some financial statements? Let's really get. I'm joking.
Absolutely. Nothing
Yeah,
more than a therapist loves that a therapist loves than a financial statement. So
that's right. That's right. Lauren, do you do many interviews or have you been on anything relating to that before?
not a ton. I've done a few podcasts about more maternal mental health stuff, but not so much about actually starting the practice. So I'm excited to be here and kind of talk through it a little.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. Cool. Well, the first thing I want to start off with is just tell us about yourself, tell us where you live, all those things, but do without talking about your practice. Let's just get just
Okay.
without the practice first, and then we'll jump into the practice.
All right. I'm Lauren Ratliff. I live in Wilmette, Illinois, which is on the North Shore of Chicago. Um, and I'm a mom of three. I have a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And as of last week, I have a 3-month puppy. So very busy in my house. But I'm a social worker by nature, and it's a big part of my identity. Um, and I am actually, fun fact, currently training for a boxing match for a nonprofit, for a charity that my family opened in February. So that's a little out of my comfort zone, but just making
Yeah.
it through.
Have you boxed before, or is this completely new?
Completely new.
All right.
So I'm training a few days a week with a boxing trainer and getting in the ring at the House of Blues in February. So
Wow.
yeah,
Who do you box? Like other people who are attached to the nonprofit?
yeah,
This is so interesting.
yeah. I'm really throwing you for a loop here.
Yeah.
It's so we have about 30 boxers that signed up to train and then ultimately fight at the event. So there's 6 women. So as the process goes on, we'll be paired kind of appropriately based on age and weight and ability. Um, it's a pretty big event. I
Wow.
mean, all the boxers are raising money for the nonprofit for pancreatic cancer research and family assistance. There'll be 1,000 people watching us on
Wow.
the night of the event. So
That's amazing.
yeah,
And yeah, that is probably the most surprising thing I've heard in in a while. So very cool.
me too.
What's the name of the nonprofit? Just if people want to look it up and check it out.
The Ramon Foundation.
Ramon
That was
Foundation.
started by my
Okay.
family after my dad passed 7 years ago.
Okay. Wow, that's some very cool work and
Yep.
a really fun way to bring awareness to a nonprofit. There's a lot
Totally.
of not so exciting ways, and that is probably the
Yeah.
most exciting way. So,
Yeah.
all
Fun
right.
for others,
Well,
not so much fun for me, I think, in February, but we'll see.
oh man. Well, I would love to keep talking about that, but I know we're here to talk about private practice. But yeah, hope that goes well. Hope you, um, yeah, I don't like win, I guess.
Yeah.
Defeat your opponent. Don't get too beat up. Well, tell us though about your practice. Tell us about the origin story of your practice. How did it start? What pushed you to start it? Yeah, curious about that story.
Yeah, so I'm the owner of Matrescence Therapy. And Matrescence Therapy is a little unique that is in that it's super niche. So we are primarily focused on perinatal mental health and maternal mental health. Um, and I never in a million years saw myself as the group practice owner of a practice like this, but it's been just such an amazing journey, and it's really been, kind of a dream job for me. So I started as a social worker in a few different settings, but ultimately was apprenticed in Chicago doing labor and delivery and postpartum social work. And then pivoted to more kind of perinatal mental health in the outpatient setting of Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Um, and when I was there, the need for really specific perinatal mental health support was so evident to me. This is not a period of life where you want to be meeting with therapists that don't truly know what you're going through or are not really specialized in this area. And I know when I had my first baby 6.5 years ago, it just was the most transformative roller coaster experience for me. And I really struggled in the postpartum period, especially right away. and was just shocked at the lack of resources. And I thought if anyone was going to totally crush motherhood, it was going to be me. I was the postpartum social worker. I was, all my friends had babies. I was a nanny for a million years. And it was such a huge wake up and just really unexpected how I handled that. So, through that, I really had the idea to start a practice kind of on my own of just really specialized support for people who are in this transition. Um, so I left Northwestern when my second child was born about 4.5 years ago. Um, was a solo practitioner for 2 years, and then the need just kept growing and growing and growing. So it was either, kind of stop where I was, which was totally fine, or kind of try to scale this in a way that was really meaningful to me and, meaningful to all the women who are reaching out to us. So we started hiring a few years ago, and since then, it's expanded to 22 clinicians that all kind of are niched within the niche. So we have therapists that specialize in fertility. We have therapists that are specialized in moms with toddlers or postpartum anxiety. And we rebranded a little bit to kind of get out of just the pregnancy postpartum phase solo. So now we're seeing all motherhood of all kind of walks of life. So everyone from trying to conceive through perimenopause and menopause, because we just kept seeing the need grow in those really specific areas.
Yeah, that's very cool. Tell me, when you were kind of considering the business, starting the business, how long of a timeline was that where the idea first kind of started somewhere in your mind to actually saying, I'm going to pull the trigger and go start this business? Was that, how long of a process was that?
I would say a few years. I kind of always wanted to end up doing this, especially again, I'm a mom of three. Working in a hospital setting is just really, really tricky to do. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew this would give me the flexibility to be really present for my family, but also do something that I absolutely love doing. And then, so yeah, thinking about it for a few years. And then my second was born, peak COVID, really couldn't go back to the hospital with two babies at home. So it just felt very, very clear that that was the time to do it. So I had a lot of support through Northwestern where I was working and still really connected to them over there. But it was just kind of a nice extension of what I was doing before.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So it sounds like a deep desire that you had that kind of grew over time, and maybe some conditions like COVID came in to kind of push that along.
Yep.
Very cool. Um, so there's obviously a lot of different hats in private practice ownership. Where do you feel like you were comfortable starting out? Where you're like, all right, I got this. I think
Mhm.
this will be fine. And where were those areas where you felt the most uncomfortable of, I really don't know how to do this piece of business, or this is something I've never done before. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I think that the clinical side of things is something that I'm super comfortable with, right? Like I am more than comfortable sitting in front of most people seeking therapy and can navigate that really well. Um, the business side of things, I'm sure most of the people you work with and people who are listening now, we were never taught that in grad school. I'm a social worker. We were taught how to help people. We weren't taught on
Mm-hmm.
how to read financial statements or how to grow a practice or how to get a network with insurance. Um, and I found, especially at the beginning, like there seems to be a lot of gatekeeping with practices, and just kind of this mentality of not wanting to share kind of the secrets of private practice.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to find some therapists who had started practices, a few years before mine that were really open and helpful with, okay, here's the exact steps to get in network with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Here's what we need to do to get an LLC. So those were kind of the more, logistical, um, kind of more black and white areas of starting the practice that I needed support, but were ultimately, kind of easier to do than I thought they would be.
Mm-hmm.
I think through the years of doing this, the stuff that, have been a big learning curve for me is managing people. Again, was not really taught on how to do that. And, holding space for supporting people and being empathetic to, clinicians that need different things, but also having to have the business in mind, having to really figure out, okay, what do we need to do to keep the lights on in the practice, but also support all the clinicians that want different
Hmm.
things. Um, and then I think scaling too, to some degree, it's felt natural because when you're passionate about a subject, I think it just is easier to kind of put one foot in front of the other and keep growing. But there's also things that, I hadn't thought about with scaling, and I kind of put some people on my team and hired some outside support to really help me through some of that stuff.
Sure. I love what you said about gatekeeping because in business, there's just that inherent competitive nature, right? Where you see someone else doing something similar to you and you think it's either me or them, or at least
Yep.
that's often where the culture goes to. And I love what you said of you found some people who were a little countercultural with that of saying, hey, we understand there's plenty of work to go around. There's plenty of people to help out, plenty of people that need therapy. Let's share some of that. So I love that. And that's a little bit of the my desire behind this interview series as well is like, let's open that curtain a little bit to say, here's what others have done before. And let's gatekeep less. Like we don't need to be out here sharing trade secrets, but also there's a lot of things that we can share to help others and help other businesses and provide more therapy and more help to more communities, right? So I love that you brought that up. Um, the other thing I was thinking about, you said that team aspect was new to you, managing people. You now have, you said over 20 therapists.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about that. What were some pain points or some bumps in the journey as you built up that team? Because I mean, managing over 20 people is quite the caseload, quite
Mhm.
the team load. So talk us through that a little bit. Like, what are a few things you can think of as you think back? This worked really well. This really didn't work well. This was a tough thing to learn. Anything you can remember on that team side? Because I think as you scale, that's such a huge change from going from solo to group.
Totally. What I think, as I look back on through the last couple of years of hiring people, and Nate, you and I have talked about this a little bit, and you've been really helpful in this piece. I felt like I was trying to kind of make exceptions and accommodations for different scenarios of, people wanting only 2 hours a week or people wanting a different pay structure. And again, it feels as a therapist, I think especially, it feels icky to say no to people and to not really show up in a way that they want me to. So I think if I had to look back and kind of do it a little bit differently, I would have had a more standardized practice of hiring people, expecting certain things, having a minimum number of hours. I think that would have just taken the guesswork out of all this a little bit. And that's something that other practice owners had told me, like don't hire really part-time people. It's going to be tricky to manage, and ultimately it's not going to be financially helpful to the practice. Kind of did it anyways, and it's been, a good opportunity and a good learning experience. But,
Mm-hmm.
looking back, all those people were right that had told me that advice. Um, so I think again, just, taking the emotional side out of the hiring process and out of trying to accommodate clinicians as much as possible, and just really looking at facts and really looking at, the financials of this is what's going to work for the practice and this is what's not, I think is a
Sure.
really helpful way to look at that.
Yeah. You mentioned setting expectations with clinicians, saying,
Mhm.
hey, if you're going to be super part-time, maybe this isn't going to work. Or how have you how have you found maybe that sweet spot or a way that's worked to kind of set those expectations at hiring to talk through, hey, this is what's expected at the practice. And then really, I think maybe the hard part even on top of that is maintaining those expectations once someone's on the team,
Mm.
because I see oftentimes expectations are set and then it kind of falls off, right? It's hard to maintain those and keep that. So what have you found there? What's worked and how have you tried to maintain those expectations post hiring with your team?
Mhm. I think one thing I wish I would have done a little differently, and I'm really working on now, is dealing with issues right off the bat. So I think it's easier to avoid things. If people aren't completing their notes, like, okay, we'll just give them a pass for a few months. Okay, it happened last month. We talked about it. Now it's happening again. Um, I think really having those conversations right off the bat when you do notice that there are issues popping up, whether that be clinical issues, whether that be admin stuff and organization. Because I think when you don't have those conversations, people don't really respect the expectations as much as I think they could. And I think when I have had those conversations more or quickly or more quicker when the issues pop up, I think people really appreciate kind of like, okay, this person's really seeing me, seeing that there's an issue, wanting to know kind of what's going on, how can we both address it and support each other, as opposed to just kind of letting things go, hoping that they work themselves out along the road.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. Deal with it right away. Try to sort it out from there. I was given that advice as marriage advice when I first got married to my wife, is like,
Okay,
deal with the
love
issue as
it.
soon as it comes up. And I feel like it's funny to parallel that with the team, but it's so true, right? Like, don't
Yeah,
sweep things under the rug, bring it up as soon as possible, and let's communicate it clearly, right? And like you said, let's keep respecting these expectations instead of letting things slide
yeah.
from the beginning. Yeah, that's great.
And I think also,
So, oh,
sorry
please,
not
yeah.
to interrupt you, but my practice is a little unique in that we don't have as much. We don't have set hours that people need to be working. We don't have, a really structured way of taking time off. I work with all moms, right? Like I really hire clinicians that are,
Mm-hmm.
are moms that are in a phase of motherhood that need flexibility, and that's really important to me as a mom. Um, so I think finding people that are going to appreciate some of the stuff that the practice offers while also kind of respecting the boundaries that are in place, that come with kind of the things that you lay out too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Really that value fit, right, with the
Mhm.
practice. If you could go back in time over the life of the practice, are there any edits that really jump out where you could say, I'd go back and do this differently or change this? Is there anything that jumps out really strongly in your mind of, I'd go back to this year and change this thing so that XYZ didn't happen?
Mhm. I think I would have stopped seeing as many clients earlier,
Mm.
which is really hard as a clinician because I love seeing clients and I still see
Mm-hmm.
clients. But it got to a point where it was really inhibiting me from the growth of the practice. And you only have so much time of the day. And if you're seeing, 15 clients a week, those are 15 hours that you can be developing business, you can be networking, you can be having one-on-one conversations with clinicians.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I was told that I should be doing, and it took me a little bit longer than it could have. I think it would have been really helpful at scaling the practice if I had cut back a bit.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit, like, what was that? What did that transition look like? Like, where were you maybe as you started adding a team versus where are you now, and how long of a transition was that?
It's kind of hard to say. Basically, I would say 2 years ago, I stopped taking new clients on. Um, So, some of my caseload, I still see, but then some of them I had to have those conversations with clients, and I really was able to identify who are the clients that are either stable enough to be transitioned to a new clinician or probably need more support than I can give them, than just, a monthly check-in therapy session like we were doing. So really making a list of who are the ones that can stick around that maybe are a little more flexible or who needs different types of support that can be offloaded onto other clinicians in the practice, and then being really on top of the warm handoff with that. But I would say probably 6 months ago, I made an active decision to really, really cut back on those clinical hours, and kind of just laid it out for clients that in the next 2 months, this is what was my plan, and then we can kind of continue working together and
Mm-hmm.
figure out what next step makes sense for them.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because that was the part you said, right, that you were the most comfortable with starting the
Mhm.
business, right? Is like the clinical work. You're like, this is what I know I'm really good at. This is what I enjoy. That's my area of expertise. And it's funny because the business is again countercultural in that way. Because if you just stay there, kept doing what you're really good at, kind of waited on those other areas, the business isn't going to scale, right? So cool to hear of that transition that you're able to do, moving away from that zone of comfort into those new pieces, which maybe become new zones of expertise down the road. So Um, Tell us then what's kind of your day to day, right? Or your week to week? Like, what are your responsibilities looking like? How has that changed, right? Since you were kind of sitting there doing mostly sessions, now you're doing a bunch of different things. What are some of the things you're doing now that you weren't before? And what does that kind of mix of responsibilities look like?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm really working now to be really I'm really prioritizing my time differently than I think I had before. I'm really intentional about my time. So right now, I would say my biggest role is really the business development. So meeting with people who are going to be referring clients to the practice, meeting with OBGYNs, physicians, other support people in the perinatal and maternal mental health space that are really looking for this type of support, creating a solution to their problem of, okay, well, I'm screening these women and where am I going to send them if they need support? Making that transition really, really seamless for them and really being kind of a key player in the support that they're giving to the women that they're talking to. Um, I'm doing a lot of hiring now, so really focusing on where do we need to grow in 2026? How do I put the right people into practice to help support that growth? And then how do I shift our team structure to make sense? Because I think we're at a point where the structure we have has worked really well and we've worked hard at creating that, but we're getting bigger. And so how do we change those roles a little bit so that we can make room for new clinicians, we can help grow certain programs that we're looking to grow and help put the right clinicians into leadership so that everybody feels like they're contributing to the growth of the practice.
Yeah, that's great. And it's quite the change from the clinical work when you started. You
Mhm.
mentioned time management, protecting your time. And to me, that feels like such an important skill set that is not natural to almost anyone, right? Of like, how do I focus on the right things at the right point? How do I protect my time from other things coming in and taking over? And that's something that for me, I feel like I'm always working towards and honestly not good at naturally. But I also think that's probably the difference between people who are really high achieving and people who are kind of average achieving in a business or otherwise. Anything you can share there that's worked well for you on that time management, time protection side?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It does feel it feels uncomfortable to be offloading things that are important to you. Um, and this practice is a huge part of my identity. It's a very important thing to me, obviously. I often say it's my fourth child. And giving that up has been tough. But what I am really intentional about doing is every month or so, I'll really look through every task that I'm doing for the week and figure out what is what are the things that I'm doing that are actually moving the needle here at growing the practice? And then what are these small things that take up a ton of time that aren't totally tied into the success of our practice that can probably be offloaded to people that I have on my support team, I have on my leadership team. And then just really simplifying as much as possible. There's a lot of things that we do, I think, as business owners and therapists that, again, seem important, but probably at the end of the day, not worth the time that you're putting into them.
So it sounds like a almost like a task audit. You're looking through the
Mhm.
last month. Where did I spend my time? Are you doing that by looking at a calendar? How do you kind of keep track of that and look through that?
Yeah, I really look at my calendar and I'm really intentional about really putting everything into my calendar, right? So even if it's not a
Mhm.
meeting, even if it's not a therapy hour, later today I have a 2 hour block of working on my 2026 goals and hiring strategy. So having everything on your calendar, you can really see, you can't lie to yourself when you're like, well, where did all my time go? You can just look at your calendar and figure out, okay, that was a huge chunk of time, probably wasn't worth it. Could I have done that differently? Um, because you really, especially when you get bigger, you can't do it all, or it will be a detriment to the practice and the growth.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great habit to get into, that looking back. Because I mean, I know I've talked to many business owners who say, where did the time go? Where did I spend my week? Where did I spend my day? And it's hard to get a grasp on that, right? If you don't have it recorded somewhere, it's like,
Mhm.
I don't know what I did. I know I did something. I know I was working, but I don't know
Yeah.
where that work was going. So I love kind of the accountability that you have with having it in the calendar, being able to go back and then having a normal rhythm of saying, all right, not only I'm going to analyze where everything was, but like you said, now I like how you said that what's moving the needle forward and what's something that I can delegate, right? It's basically like a delegate, don't delegate, going through that. I think that's a great way to do that. Super, super healthy, super helpful. What's obviously you're doing a lot of cool things. Practice has scaled a ton, sounds like. What's something that you're still feel like you're figuring out or kind of working through in the practice on the business side?
Good question. I'm still working through, I think we have a really good rhythm right now, but to really scale this into different states, to scale this into um, in a way that I'm doing even less of the day-to-day tasks. I'm still trying to figure out what that really looks like. And again, how can we change the structure of our leadership to really support that? That's not something that totally comes natural to me. So I'm working with a business coach. I work with you. I work with a lot of people who have done this a million times before that can really support me in, let's not reinvent the wheel here. Let's figure out the right next steps to continue to grow. Um, and then what does my role evolve into at some point? And what do I want it to look like and what makes sense for the business too?
Yeah, that's great. Bringing in those outside resources, seeing kind of like you said at the beginning, taking what other people have done and utilizing it for your own business, right? In my past life when I was a teacher, I heard many people say, teaching is mostly taking what other people have done and just reapplying it to your situation. And I think the same is true in business in a lot of ways. I mean, you have your visionaries who come up with something completely new and are on a different kind of level, very different personality. But I think most of business is, oh, someone's doing something cool over there. I can take that idea and reapply it in a way that makes sense for my business, right? But first, you have to find the right people, like you're saying, who can come in and bring in some of those new ideas. So whether that's coaching, consulting, very cool. Um, Last kind of question here, Lauren. If you could distill down your entrepreneurship so far into one piece of advice, I know that's hard, and it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be the best one, but what's the one that's prominent in your mind that pumps up? This is my one piece of advice to someone else who's starting a private practice in the earlier stages of private practice, etc.
It's going to sound cliche, but I think bet on yourself. I think having confidence that if you're passionate about something, if you're passionate about the population you're working with, you can figure out the details along the way, but always keeping in mind, what is your mission? What is your vision? And doing anything that you can to get yourself there. Again, I'm a social worker by nature. These are not skills that I necessarily had taught to me or inside of me, but I think just being really confident and knowing that no one can really do it better than you can. Um, I'm a mom of three. I've been postpartum 3 times. I've struggled in different ways, and I kind of have thought to myself, like, no one knows this world better than I do. No one has, been
Yeah.
in it more than this personally. So
Mm-hmm.
why can I not take that personal side and support other people who are doing it and doing it in a way that's profitable and sustainable?
I love that. And I think what's really cool about that, kind of like we were saying in the last question, is you have that confidence, but it's not confidence that makes it so that you believe that you know everything and have all the answers. It's just
Mhm.
confidence that you know that you will find a way and you'll work through it. Right.
Yes.
So there's a big difference between confidence and pride. And I think you're very far away from pride, but you're in a really healthy place of confidence. So that's cool to hear. Any other thoughts, Lauren? I think that's amazing. I think it's amazing what you've built in only a few years with the practice. Any other tips that you'd share to someone else starting out, or have we covered it?
I think we're in a really interesting mental health space right now where mental health has never been more important. It's never been more valued. And also, there's a lot of things that I think practice owners see as threats to that, like AI, like some of these other really big practices that are not therapist started or social worker or counselor started. And I think you can get really bogged down by that noise. And it can, if you think too much about the better helps of the world, you're not going to move forward with your practice. But I think if you just can really be dialed in to what you want to do, you just kind of have to be able to put that noise to the side and know that you can do that just as much as these other practices can.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Well, you're doing great work out there, Lauren. Love the value and the support you're bringing to mothers in all stages. We'll put a link to your website in the description below this video. So if you're watching this and you want to learn more about Lauren, about Matrescence, if you want to work with Lauren, if you want to just learn from Lauren, check out that website there. And we'll go from there. But yeah, thank you, Lauren, for joining us on the Therapy for Your Practice interview series. We're going to keep interviewing practice owners, hopefully get a really nice wide range of many people who have started great private practices doing great work here. So thank you again, Lauren, and good luck
Thanks
on the
again.
boxing
Appreciate
match.
it. Thank you.